Welcome to the Reddit library. Today, we'll be looking at r/AskReddit, where the user que no queso por qué asked the question, Police officers of Reddit, have you ever had to arrest a relative, significant other, friend? If so, what was it like afterwards? I spent around 2 years as a special constable for the Met Police. The unit I joined would mostly work nighttime violence, when pubs and clubs closed, at any borough that requested our assistance, and so we could be in any borough that night. One night shift, we are in my home borough. I'm in the van and we're circling around near where I live, which was a bit of a novelty. Normally, being anywhere in London means I have no clue where I am. A call comes down to reports of a burglary, and I freeze as it's my neighbor's address. We arrive, and I speak to the family, a young Muslim couple who have just got married a few days ago, and they looked more surprised to me than I them. They heard noises and came downstairs to find someone in a mask rooting through drawers, who scarpered out the back door when spotted. At around this time, the door knocked, and it's my girlfriend. Again, surprised to see me, who says there's someone in our garden. Here we go. This could be a good job. My garden at the time was pretty secure. Unless you can scale walls, you aren't getting out. My colleague goes in through the front door whilst I jump over the wall from the neighbors and immediately get jumped by someone. They were pretty weak and I easily overpower them as my colleague arrives baton drawn. After arresting and cuffing, we get the lights on and I find it's someone I've been friends with since school, who we had just round with his wife for dinner a few nights ago. Turns out, he knew that our neighbors had gotten married and had planned to burgle them for their jewelry and wedding gifts. Suffice to say, I am no longer in contact. He got sent down for 2 years and only got released a few months ago. Michigan cop here. I got a call on July 5th from Alcohol Treatment Services stating that 2 guys who were out on bond blew hot due to partying from the night before. When I got there, one of the guys was a good friend of mine. The hard part was his dad, who always took great care of me, was standing right there while I hooked him up. They were super cool about it, but I still feel bad. On the way to jail, we caught up and talked about family. As a recovering addict who works in the recovery field, I'd just like to let you know that that type of experience could have a great positive impact on your friend. Getting arrested by a stranger is one thing and can easily be shrugged off, but getting arrested by a friend in front of your father can cause some serious self-reflection. This is what I was thinking as well. There is another story in this thread where a man being arrested by his brother for being drunk and reckless helped him seek help. I'm glad there were no hard feelings after the arrest. Police officer here. Got called to a verbal domestic and quickly learned after speaking with the female that an old friend's dad was cheating on his wife with her. I had my partner take over the investigation as I didn't want to be biased. Anyway, guy shows up. We have an awkward chat, and everyone is cautioned not to contact or communicate with each other anymore, and both parties are in full agreement. Female doesn't want to ruin his life, and he says he is done with his cheating ways. 2 hours later, the female calls and tells us that he drove by her house a few times after we left. I call him and give him a second and very stern caution to give her some breathing room or he will be charged with domestic criminal harassment. I try to make him see reason and it seems to work. No more calls for the rest of our shift. The next morning, I'm brushing my teeth before heading into work and I get a phone call from him saying that he screwed up and left a note on her car last night. She called a different cop who issued a warrant for his arrest after reading our reports that he had already been cautioned twice. He asked what to do. I told him to report to the front desk as soon as I go to work and he complied. Then my partner from the previous day and I arrested him and booked him for criminal harassment. Some people just don't get the hint. How many times do you have to tell a guy to stop harassing someone before they realize it's illegal? Every time. I arrested my sister 2 years ago. We are fine now. Story. 2 years ago, I stopped by my parents' house while on duty to have a cup of coffee with my father. When I got there, I heard screaming from the backyard and went out to see what was going on. I saw my sister had my mother pinned to the ground and was kicking her violently, multiple times, while screaming and swearing at the top of her lungs. I tackled her to stop the attack and she began to punch and kick me too. The neighbors had come outside to see what was going on and my sister would not calm down. My mother was badly injured and it took my father and me both to get my sister under control. She was fighting like I've never seen someone fight before. She was biting, clawing, kicking, and tried to gouge out my eyes. I had no choice but to disengage and use pepper spray in an attempt to subdue her. It worked and we finally got her under control. I called for an ambulance to evaluate my mother and my sister was transported to the station by another officer. The story, I found out later, was that my mother had found methamphetamine in my sister's car and when she confronted my sister about it, my sister lost it and attacked her. My sister was committed to a drug rehab facility and has been clean, as far as I know, ever since. We have a good relationship now, although we'll never be best friends or anything. Wow, that's disturbing. Beating your own mother like that for basically nothing. Was she high at the moment? Can't speak for the OP, but even if she wasn't, a meth head isn't ever really known for being calm and collected. Former federal agent. I had to arrest a former partner who I graduated the academy with. He was a good guy, was involved in shooting and never recovered. Turned to alcohol, marriage went south, everything went downhill. After an incident where he started shooting out the windows on his house, the local cops cordoned off the area and notified our agency. We talked him down and convinced him to come with us. Arrested him, and we drove him to the local PD where they prosecuted him. He was terminated, and a senior agent was reprimanded for covering up a previous alcohol and firearms related incident. Involved in a shooting equals he killed someone, right? Not judging, probably perfectly justified, but I think the reliance on euphemism is a part of the reason these things are apparently becoming so commonplace. Yes, he killed someone. I was trying to keep it short as I am posting from mobile. He responded to what turned out to be the execution of a family of illegal immigrants. A 17-year-old male cartel member who was one of the shooters opened fire on the responding agents. The agent in question returned fire with his sidearm. The wounded 17-year-old died en route to the local hospital. Ex-NSW police officer here. I was in the car with another constable. Checked bona fides, came over. Just means find out what's going on, often due to horrible smells. Arrive at address in industrial area. Clearly drugs being cooked because no one is burning that at 3 a.m. unless it's illegal. It smelled horrible. Male comes outside to immediately give himself up. I secure him whilst my partner went in. Turns out, the second one was my partner's longtime family friend. We both had to go on forced leave while another LAC investigated to make sure there was no criminal activity on our behalf. They take that shot pretty seriously in Australia. Turn out the raw materials would have equated to around 10 mil street value. Edit. Yes, meth was involved, so I've since changed my name to Hank. How do they deal with pay on forced leave? I've heard some places make you take a minimum wage desk job that would in no way relate to the case or something like that. If so, would you get compensated for lost pay when cleared of any wrongdoing? No one's pay can be reduced in Australia for any reason. Additionally, no one can be put on unpaid leave unless there is a request for it from an employee. If you have more than 9 weeks leave occurred, you accrue 4 weeks a year here, then they can force you to use some of that. Otherwise, they will just pay you out of pocket. Ah, interesting. Thanks. In the US, it can vary drastically between public versus private job, area you live, union or not, and what the potential or actual charge is. As a military police officer in Hawaii, I became really good friends with a guy in my unit. Babysat his 4-year-old, was invited over for family dinners, and everything. I go into my ship with him one day when I am told to relieve him of his weapon and cuff him. Ended up having to wake his wife up, who thought I just stopped by for breakfast, lol, to investigate a domestic violence report that his mother-in-law called in from NC. Ended up that she wanted to go home. He didn't want his kid to leave. They got in an argument and she called home to tell her mom about the argument they had. The military makes the service members leave their homes in these situations, but of course the barracks were full. So less than 12 hours after I handcuffed him, guess who's sleeping on the floor of my room? I think he stayed for a few weeks before we got on each other's nerves, lol. He wasn't mad at me about it. I was doing as I was ordered, but it was extremely difficult, though I think I stayed professional throughout, interviewing his wife, my friend, to get evidence to convict him of a crime. It was also awkward with my buddy, because I obviously couldn't discuss the case with him. He understood and didn't ask me much about it. I think the worst was, during and after the investigation, that I felt some guilt for not knowing what was going on and trying to help in some way. I also felt like I was tearing apart a 4-year-old's family, though it was obviously on the way out already. Typing this one for my dad. Back in 2006, it was nearing the end of the second shift and I was ready to get off. The call came in of his shooting. I was about a mile away top, so I was first on the scene by a lot. I head inside, check the bedrooms, and find 2 men dead from shotgun wounds. I knew them, family friends from growing up, good people, but crud heads. You know what I mean? Always getting into trouble, never big things, just drugs here, public intoxication there. Nothing huge. Well, they ate it that day. What got me though, was I had seen their older sister earlier when I pulled over her friend. It's just weird how you can see someone and talk about the family quick, and a few hours later, know that she's about to find out how much she's just lost. They were still warm, so I continued my search, fast as I called in the ambulance. I check, find the back door ajar and head out. I get a call saying that the shooter was still in the neighborhood as someone just reported him. Not a block away, within the last 2 to 3 minutes, going through the backyards and across alleys, other officers are now in the area and we're hunting him. I see movement. It's him. It's the guy. The shooter. No weapon to be seen, thankfully. I got him in my sights. Yell to him to stop where he is. Thank God he does. Pistol still drawn on him. I get him on the ground, cuff him and think for a moment. Shoot him. He deserves it. Another officer is now on the scene with me, gets me off the shooter's back and pushes me aside. I sit down next to his cruiser and cry. After, I end up smoking about a pack of cigarettes before I get home. I had quit in 1994 and this was the first and only time I broke down and smoked. I put in my retirement papers 2 weeks later. Edit. Too long didn't read. My dad was the first responder to a double homicide, knew both victims personally, and said some bad words. Note, my dad had been on the force for 26 years and now has severe PTSD from years of crud like this. That sounds rough as hell, but kudos to him for upholding what's right and wrong even in a situation as messed up as that. I'm sure a lesser man would have tried something to exact revenge in that scenario. Yes, friend. He was drunk and driving. Wasn't a friend afterward, but he was alive and didn't kill anyone that night. So, fair trade. You did the right thing and no one needs someone who blames you for their own mistakes as a friend. When I was a freshman in high school, we had an unusual aggressive group of seniors who would pick on us often. Note, no, I did not become a cop because I got picked on when I was 15. I didn't even decide I wanted to try LE until I was 25. Just saying. So out of the entire year, there was one person who ever stuck up for me, and I have always been thankful that one of their peers who was their size was willing to stand up to them. Anyway, flash forward to my first week as a reserve police officer, volunteer police to learn the job and gain experience prior to applying full-time, uniform, gun, badge, etc., just no paycheck. We go to a call of someone who drunk falling through the window of a business. Show up for my first arrest and guess who? The guy. The one person who ever stuck up for me, and I had no ability to help him because I was brand new and had no clout at the time. Worst part was when he was in cuffs and looked at me repeating, "Really? Really?" I haven't forgot that moment, and it actually played a large part in how I treated people when I was an officer, actually. 8 years and resigned now. I have since touched base with him and thanked him for what he did for me in high school. He hasn't fallen through any windows since, and he's doing well. Haha. Back in '96, before I left law enforcement and enlisted in the military, got a call to a bar fight, and when I arrived, found a good friend of mine, Rick, was the primary involved. Now, Rick tried to go pro wrestler, WWE type, but never made the cut, but that gives you an idea of how he was built at 6'4". Additionally, my dad had just sold him a .45 revolver about 3 weeks earlier, and I knew Rick got stupid and mean when drunk. Long story shortened, I asked him where his gun was. He said he didn't own a gun. I called him an idiot and a liar. My dad sold him one and I knew it. He laughed and recognized me, yes, that drunk, and told me it was at his house. I offered him a ride home and he walked out into my patrol car. He got a bunch of fines levied against him, and I met him as soon as he left court to give him a ride home. He called me an ass. I joked that I did not say it would be a ride straight home. Still long distance FB friends. 19 years later though, we have not seen each other since '97 and live on opposite sides of the country. Have you ever had to arrest someone you know? Let us know in the comments below and you might get a chance to be featured in an upcoming video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more videos from the library, and as always, thank you so much for watching. We wish you health and safety in these times of crisis. Don't forget to wash your hands.